So why are these models so versatile? How come all these applications and more seem to come out, week on week? People ordering pizzas with like by chaining together language models, people coming up with new sort of like ways in which conversational models can be used as part of business processes, etc. What makes them such a sort of general, versatile bit of technology? And part of the reason is that these foundation models and their derivative models are surprisingly data efficient. So relatively few samples of data reflecting a new behavior, a new application, a new sort of attribute of the model are needed to output behavior like the behavior exemplified in the examples, right? And so obviously the term relatively few is heavily underspecified here. In some cases, it can still be a lot. The more complex and structured the behavior is, obviously, the more you need to have a diverse set of examples curated to reflect that complexity. But nonetheless, just going back to lambda, the fact that you could teach a large language model to interact with a search engine and for it to like have behavior that spoke to doing something more than just memorizing like existing queries, but like having that behavior be triggered more broadly off a few thousand annotations, something that just it blew my mind. I thought that was like an amazing sort of point. That like it was cheaper to like find annotators and pay them well and get good data than it was to try and think of more complicated sort of reinforcement learning setups with an agent interacting with an environment that somehow has language. And that's where a lot of these previous efforts in research to have language-enabled agents that really understand natural language failed because we didn't really know how to do transfer and we couldn't build synthetic environments that could be simulated at a very high sort of degree of parallelism that also had very complex natural language in them. So now it just turns out we could just take it. It was large language modeling all along. We could train the models and be clever about how we ask annotators to add in structured data, and new behavior like acting on a search engine just popped out of it. That's magical. So this notion of data efficiency is attested in the recent literature. In the Stanford position paper on foundation models, they already talk about this notion of learning from a few examples and transferring to a broader case of behaviors of a like sort of a similar type was attested throughout recent literature experimentally, mirroring things that we see in pre-training for vision, for computer vision, some sort of data efficiency gains. In the supernatural instructions paper by Wang et al. So the title I've always loved. It makes it sound like the instructions are supernatural rather than natural. Anyway, it tickles me every time I say this paper title. They showed a number of interesting results. That, for example, that as the number of training tasks increased on a log scale, so as it doubles and doubles and doubles, that you have a linear increase in performance, showing both that the tasks constructively interfere in that they help each other produce well on their individual tasks. Adding more similar tasks helps, but they don't destructively interfere. So that provided that you're training things concurrently rather than sequentially, which might lead to catastrophic forgetting, that the tasks don't clash with each other, and that a sufficiently large model can learn to do all those things together well. And this second plot is also quite interesting. So that shows that the number of instances per training task, again on a log scale on the x-axis, as you increase it exponentially, you don't really have significant or any gains past some point in terms of the performance of the model. So that between 6 and 60 examples per type of behavior is often sufficient to have that task be nailed, or like to have adequate performance, and that you have diminishing or no returns after that particular point. And the last plot primarily shows that when you have this sort of massive multitask setting, that you still have benefits of scale with regard to model parameters. So that the scale, the number of parameters is, as you might expect, some sort of informs the capacity of the model, which in turn obviously means that's how well you can adequately deal with a large number of parallel tasks.